it's weird that I got assigned this because they didn't know, like, I have a background in music. I played jazz for 15 years. Not gonna say I'm any good at it, but I was like, "Oh, music and writing, like, oh, I'm so in for this."
It's nice to talk to musicians as well, actually. So we can have a kind of a different type of conversation, really.
Well, and it's funny because my roommate is an avid guitar player, and I was like, "Oh, I'm interviewing someone with guitar books. We're gonna put this down into the Christmas column."
Let me know if I'm always happy to send out some books. So if there's anything you specifically want, just let me know and give me your address and I'll get them over to you.
Awesome, thank you so much.
No worries.
He could use a little more formal training. He's
Oh,
great.
you're being recorded, right?
Oh, yeah, no, I'm sure he's listening to me right now. So, first and foremost, I wanna know about the music and
Mm.
where that started for you, even before the author journey. What got you into music in the
Oh,
first
God.
place? Like, way
Yeah.
back when?
How far do you want to go back? I think there were two things. There were two really clear things that happened for me. I saw Hendrix burning his guitar. I don't know where. It was like a live BBC recording of something before I was born. And I was like, yep, that looks pretty cool. That's for me. And I think it was that energy and the power of that performance that I must have been young, like 8, 9. I was like, yeah, that's for me. That's for me. And then about the same time, I saw Queen playing Live Aid, which was, I forget which year, 86, I think. And yeah, like that was it. Like, die hard Queen fan. And that's really what got me into it. So I like bugged my parents for guitar lessons and they eventually got me like classical guitar lessons at my local school, which it wasn't really what I wanted. I wanted to be smashing guitars and things like that. But it was a guitar in my hands and that was perfect. And then I did quite well at that. And when I went to like high school, senior school, I was probably 11, 12, and I started playing electric there and really never looked back. So my whole life became about playing guitar at that point. I even had a few students when I was at school. I was very lucky to have really good teachers. And yeah, like it was what I lived and breathed, slept with the guitar and just and my whole life became about going to Guitar Institute, and that was like the direction I wanted to go to because like you guys have got like Berkeley and Musicians Institute and places like that in Boston's great hub and the music and obviously in LA is when we had the Guitar Institute and that was it. I was obsessed with going there and so I managed to pass my audition. I got in I had a terrible time there. Like the first year was great, and then we were talking a little bit about jazz before. Like I'd never really played jazz, and then suddenly my second year was all about playing jazz, and I sucked. Like I totally sucked. And my personality is like I'm really bad at this. I am going to keep running into that wall until it breaks down. So I stuck out that year, and I wasn't very happy there. But I ended up switching from there to go up to do a degree program at Leeds College of Music, which is a conservatoire in like the north of England, northeast and had an amazing time there. That was like totally refreshing for me.
What was the fundamental shift between the 2?
I'd say Guitar Institute was a less musical place for me. It was all about how fast can you play? Do you know these scales, these modes, these arpeggios? How can you apply them and things like that? It was very technique based.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of pressure. I've described it before as this crappy high school dance like movies where there's a guy and he's not quite good enough at dancing. There's too much pressure on him, and so he like has a breakdown and leaves and then comes back later. It was like that, but just it was this full on, and it's all very shreddy like guitar stuff. I was well into that. I loved Satriani and Steve Vai and Van Halen and all these guys. Yeah, there was a lot of pressure to just be the best guitarist. Whereas when I went to Leeds, it was like a real like community of musicians who went outside and played together. And like at the Guitar Institute, we didn't have a first study teacher. Like we didn't have lessons on our private instrument 101. Got that when I went to Leeds. And the lesson I wrote this in my first book that I got from my first teacher at Leeds College of Music, a guy called Yanis Pavlidis, who's an incredible player. It was like it broke me, but it was a good thing for him to say at the time because I went in for my first lesson and he said, "Man, who are you listening to? Who do you want to be? What are your influences?" And at the time, I was listening to Pat Martino, and Yanis was like, "Cool, play." So he starts playing some chords and that, he's playing. He goes, "Man, you're shit." And that's wow, because this is my identity. He goes, "So the thing is, what you're trying to do is you're trying to play this stuff up here, but right now you're here, and you've got some skill. But what are you trying to do?" And he like his one hand's on the floor. He's like, the other hand says, "You're trying to do this big jump in one go to get from where you were to up here." And he says, "If you'll trust me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you to do that, but I'm going to teach you to do it like 1,000 times. So all I want you is to forget, like, read all the lessons maybe you're finding in guitar magazines and all these other teachers and stuff like that. I want you to just do it this week. And then next week we'll come back. And if you can do it, we'll do the next thing. If you can do it, the next." And of course it like sounds really obvious, but I'd never had that before. It was always like, you need to be better. And there was no real constructive route to get there. It was just go and learn the scales as fast as you can. So that totally changed my perspective. And I took the skills and the knowledge and the ability that I had from Guitar Institute into more musical, step by step by step kind of methodology that I can learn from Leeds. And then when I went to start teaching my own students, I tried to combine and have a good balance of those things. So that was really how I started teaching. And that's at, I guess, that age, I was about 21, 22.
So in a way, even though Guitar Institute didn't pan out, it kind of it showed you that extreme
Mm.
other side.
It showed me a really unhealthy attitude towards music. And it might not have been 100% them. It probably were a lot of where I was in my head at that time, because you know what, guitar was still playing fast and millions of notes. And that was what I was into, but it very much lent itself to that. But we weren't really playing much with other people. There was no kind of like community. There was no, it just wasn't very musical. It's very competitive. And yeah, like, that was sort of a damaging environment. In fact, I did have a year off before I went back to my second year, just because like mental health wise, it wasn't doing good things for me. The one thing that I learned there, and actually this ties in, and maybe a bit of a roundabout but way to get here, but I had this incredible teacher who I was paying for private lessons with at Guitar Institute called Sean Baxter. He's just incredible. He's just one of the best players in the UK. And I was having lessons with him. And going to him was like going to the doctor. He had all of these like big black lever arch files on shelves, and he'd watch you play for a bit, and he would go, you like diagnose the problem, and he'd go and he'd pull out one of these folders, and he would just get out like in the plastic wallets, photocopy it, and go, "Okay, man, here's your homework." Because he's, "I can write these things out again, but I'll just photocopy it. You can have more time getting taught in the lesson, and these are the exercises that will fix your problems. Like, here's the prescription, man, here's the drug." So he did that, and that always stayed with me as a way to help get more time for my students in their lessons. But what I did instead was that I wrote the stuff down on my computer. And of course, I was doing the notation. I was using like Sibelius then, music notation software. And I realized people were asking the same sort of questions, and particularly about jazz. And there's so much, I wouldn't say misinformation, but there are so many paths out there where people are trying to do things that are up here where they should be working on things that are down here, or just closer, the next step, and making these big jumps. I started organizing that stuff, and it never really intended to be a book. But then somebody said to me, "Oh man, Amazon," this is 10 years ago, just over 10 years ago now. "Amazon, you can self-publish on Amazon." So I did. In fact, I sent it to one music publisher in London, but I had done so much, my book would have come with 3 DVDs. We like it, but honestly, that's never going to make any money. We can't put 3 DVDs on a book. Good luck with it, but no thank you. It's just going to be too expensive to produce. So it's the 21st century. I uploaded it onto Amazon, and I made like a really basic WordPress site. I should clarify, those DVDs contain the audio examples for every example in the book. So I uploaded the MP3s to the website and put a link to the website in the book. And then, so I have no idea how. It was a different time 10 years ago on Amazon in terms of competitiveness and marketing and things like that. It really was only just starting out. And people bought a few copies and went and downloaded the audio. And my book had an awful front covers I'd made myself, and had things and loads of typos and stuff. But I think the business part of me that's always been there, it's gone, well, listen, man, you're teaching guitar, you don't really have any kind of pension. There's all everything's sort of quite hand to mouth. I was actually living here when I wrote my first book. I'm at my mum's house at the moment. She's not been that well, so I'm like staying with her. And so yeah, this is a really lovely little stream of income. I've published it. I don't really have to do anything more with it now. And so I wrote another one, and then I wrote another one, and then another one, and the third or fourth one just really hit big for me.
So, at what point did you internalize the idea of going from a student of music to being the teacher of music?
It's an
'Cause
identity.
that's a big jump.
It's a really good question. And as a musician, I'm sure you'll maybe know the answer is that like I never stop studying. I don't have my guitar in my hands a lot these days, which does sadden me. So I'm still a student. I'm not there. I've not made it. I'm not. And I think you go and ask, I don't know, go and ask Joe Satriani and he'll say, I'm still a student. Guys like, I think it's Eric Johnson. He makes a point of getting a guitar lesson from the best dude in town whenever he's on tour and just learning something. It's like Eric Johnson. And so like, I still feel like I'm a student, but I think what legitimized, I suppose, what I was doing was the fact that like I had been teaching guitar since I was about 14 and I had, a diploma and a degree. And at that time I had probably 20, 30 students. So I was used to teaching, and that language of teaching was very informative when I was writing my book. Well, not informative, it was just natural because I write my books as if I'm talking to you. And when I'm planning out a book, it's very much a case of, okay, who am I writing for? What's their ability? Am I going to have to teach them where to put their fingers, or is it going to be a more advanced book when I can trust that they understand concepts? So that teaching methodology of they're here, they want to get here, and a book is a very linear format. If you and I have a private lesson, or if I'm teaching somebody else, you could ask me a question. And that could be like a digression of 6 months because I just figured out you're interested in, or you need to do some work on something, and we'll go over that way. On a book, you can't do that. It's got to be this and then this and then this. And so that teaching methodology is the way I've written the books, and I try to write them in a very personal way.
So, I'm curious, why books? I know in 2010, world was a different place, but you're taking my background is in art, and
Right.
teaching art in a book is difficult. It's a whole different type of
Yeah.
taking that art and putting it into uh, words. So you're transposing an art form. So
Yeah.
why books over something like video or strictly audio?
I think we can rule out strictly audio because I keep looking at doing audio books, and then I'm like, we've got 150 notated examples in this book. So the student needs to read that example to be able to play it. So let's say we'll learn everything by ear. So I think audio sadly is out. So I'd love to do audiobooks because we've got such great content. We've already got all the audio recorded for it, but I just think it is of limited benefit unless we can include a PDF download with that. And there's probably ways of doing it. We can get people to the website to download a PDF of notation, but it's just there are ways around it. We've just not done that yet. Now the big question is video. And I think that there is no good reason that we have chosen books over video. And in fact, doing video courses is constantly in the back of the mind because realistically, we've built up a audience and mailing lists of people who have bought our books. And when they download the audio, we know which book they've bought. So we could certainly upsell them a video for each teacher teaching their course. However, like I said, I don't have a good reason for it. So it's maybe not the best answer, but I think the challenge with being a student and looking at something like YouTube is you might get a quick lesson on how to play something. But finding the next lesson at an appropriate level is really difficult. And of course, there are some great guys that do really good friends of mine who do really good video courses. But I think YouTube tends to be the odd lesson. And there are great resources like Jamplay and things like that do online guitar lessons. But what we've found in our own demographic is that people still want to buy books. because I think there's something authoritative about a book that's published. We're working with some pretty famous musicians now, and it's their art and their words. And one thing that I've been thinking about is actually we like to connect artists with their fans and then try and turn those fans into artists. And it's a connection thing. And a lot of these books wouldn't necessarily get written if we weren't either ghostwriting them or helping those books, like facilitating those books happen, because they're busy. I mean, like we've just been, the amount of books we've managed to get out over the last 18 months during the pandemic has been crazy, because so many people are off the road and they're not touring, so they have this time, and that's been good. And it's going to be interesting to see how that sort of carries on over the next year. I don't like skirting around the point, but I think that both mediums have benefit, and the benefits of video are obvious. But I think there are always people who want to have books. They want to have the library. They want to have guitarists are like voracious studiers, in particular. They always want the next book or the next thing, and they want the insight of how their favorite musician does things.
There's something gratifying about reaching to the shelf,
Yeah.
pulling this reference material off, where you don't get that satisfaction if you're like, let me go to my bookmarked YouTube video.
Yeah.
It doesn't trigger the same.
Yeah, thank you for helping me with that answer, because I think that might be something to do with it. There's something tangible, like you can grab a book, and because we write our books step by step, okay, even if maybe the first chapter is a bit too easy for you, you can jump to the second chapter and you can find that point where you can pick up. And it's a course. It's like, you're here, you want to be here, and here are the step by step ways of doing it. I think just picking up, because you mentioned the arts thing, like teaching art. There are certainly books that we do which teach, the language of music and, things like that. But actually, what we tend to specialize in are the methodologies and the approaches that go behind that, the draftsmanship, if you like, the learning to draw before you paint. And a lot of our books, I wouldn't say theoretical, because they're all, the whole focus is on making music, but it's more the process of how to make the music that you want to make, rather than here is how you create art. It's the technical underpinning of what you want to say on the instrument.
The other nice thing is a book is really easy to turn the page and see next chapter.
Yeah.
A YouTube video, if I have to go fishing through a 50-minute YouTube video to find the one lesson, like there is an ease with a book that you just don't get with YouTube.
I think
but good news, I don't know if you've seen, I just saw this recently on ACX. If you're making an audiobook, there is actually a spot on ACX to upload the PDF company file.
Oh, cool.
So when they download it, the audiobook, it'll include the PDF in the download.
Oh, that's amazing. That's a game changer.
I just saw that the other day when I was uploading an audiobook. So I don't know if it's new, but great, because I want maps.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for telling me that. That seems like I've now got my next 3 years planned out.
So go do your entire backlist. It'll take you like a couple days. It'll be fine.
Fine. What's that? 160 books out in 4 languages. I think we've got about 500 titles, so it's all right.
I was thumbing through your Amazon page and I'm just like, next. Where does it end? It just keeps going. So I've got some interesting questions, because I noted that there were a couple books on your Amazon page that didn't go with the others.
Yeah.
So I noticed that you're a co-author on Mark Dawson's AMS ads book. I was paying attention to the co-authorings here.
Yeah.
So that makes me assume that you have some experience with AMS ads.
Yeah. We probably spend about £6,000 a month. I don't know what that is in freedom money. I think it's probably about $8,000.
Yeah.
Like that. So yeah, but ACOS is about 10%. Yeah. I mean, actually our spend's gone down recently, or I'm not sure why. Trying to figure that out. And having Brian Cohen as a very good friend is really helpful, because I'm like, Brian, it's broken again. But so he's great. Brian's best page forward, isn't it? So Yeah, so Mark's interviewed me, or James has interviewed me a couple of times for the Mark's podcast. And yeah, like I've always gotten well with Mark, and he knew I was doing good stuff with Amazon ads at the time. He just approached me, and it was really just co-writing that with him. So it is, I'm going to say 4 or 5 years old. So I know some of the things in there are slightly outdated, but I think it's still a good guide for people getting started. While some of the technical, which bits you click might have changed, the sort of overriding theme is the same. I have to be careful with that because I do think it is a good book, and I do think it's beneficial, of course, or else I wouldn't have done it. But it is a lot easier to do Amazon ads as a nonfiction author, especially Amazon ads when you have a strategy of naming your books as clearly and as boringly as possible. So we get really good organic reach, which keeps our costs down and things like that. So yeah, it's a good book, and it's a really nice overview of how it works and what you should be thinking. There's a few lovely just concepts that I think most indie authors, say like guys in 20 books to 50K, might know about. You just, if you've got a series, pile the adverts go to your first book in your series and try and build a mailing list from that and get fans. They're just little strategies like that. So there's things like that. But yeah, it's a couple of years old, and it is a bit from my perspective as a nonfiction author.
Can you say as part of your success that AMS ads have been like the thing that have taken you to the next level, or was it the thing that got your foot in the door?
No, I don't think they have actually, because I think I only turned on AMS ads. I don't know when I wrote that book, but it was only 6 months before I wrote that book, and I was having a lot of success. So if I had to put success down to one thing, it would be, there's a couple of things I think that combine, but I think the main thing is proliferation, writing a lot of books. And I know that's sort of a theme of most current thinking on being an indie, is that Amazon, you are a needle in a haystack, and why is somebody going to buy your book over somebody else? If you've got two books and you've got two needles in that haystack, if you're writing in series and somebody does find the first one, then yeah, maybe they're going to get the second one. And when you do that 150 times, that's a lot of needles. And particularly, again, well, I do recognize that I've spotted the luck that I had early on and built on it. I don't think I've just got lucky, and it's been a lot of work. It's been a decade. But still lucky that we're in a niche that's not particularly competitive, because what we're doing is quite technical writing. But yeah, really going back to year two, I think going into year two, I think we were making about, and this was just me, this is no other author, I think I wrote about 14 books, and like, we were the only people doing this pretty well on Amazon. I was making £8,000 a month, and I went and lived in Thailand for a year. That was a year in. Now, it's very difficult for people to have that kind of success in a year. Now it's possible, and I've got a lot of friends who have done it, but it's harder. And I think Amazon ads almost have to be a part of that now. It's just my opinion. But you need to be able to differentiate yourself from other books in your niche, and not to pick a genre at random, and not picking on this one, but there's so many like vampire romance books out, or particular niche, that there are thousands and thousands of these books, and you actually need to find a way to just raise your head above that parapet and get seen. And it's a bit more, I think the tough love answer for new authors, no, sorry, this is a little bit of a digression, and I say this to people and I just get a bit of a blank look, because people think they can just write their book, put it on Amazon, and Amazon owes them something and will sell their book for them. And it's quite common. I've put my book and I've published my book. You've not, you've made it live. That's the thing. I think the tough love answer is, you need to be, when you start writing, you need to be willing to invest in your book as if it was a new business, which it is. Forgetting all of the craft and the art and the things like that. A lot of people say this, that as soon as that writer hat comes on, the marketing hat has to, sorry, writer hat comes off, the marketing hat has to come on.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not willing to pay for editing, proofreading, a cover at the minimum, even if you do get somebody to buy your book and it's full of mistakes, or it's not had a good line edit or whatever it needed, or a developmental editor in particular, then it's unlikely somebody's going to buy the next book in your series unless you're a very good writer. And they exist, of course they do. But any sort of business, the business of being a writer, like Craig talks about all the time, the business of being a writer says that you have to invest in your product. And it's a very cold sort of way of viewing things, but all writers are on a spectrum of, I'm just writing for the love of it. I'll put it on Amazon and see what happens, or I don't even want to publish it because I'm too shy, or this is all about money, blah, 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 blah. And I think writing should be for the love of it. I think you should be having a benefit to your readers, and whether that's entertainment or teaching guitar. But if you want to do this as a business, then I think this sort of, sadly, the truth is that you actually need to invest a bit into your art and do that.
Are there any so I just released a this is purely selfish. I just re-released a nonfiction book that once upon a time it was my mortgage payments. And I just re-released it because I didn't edit it. It was a crap cover. Like what you could get away with 6 years ago is not what you can get away with today. So are there any unique marketing tips that you could give specifically for nonfiction? Is there anything unique in the nonfiction realm that stands out that might not exist for fiction authors?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a way we could do this that would help, like the interview and the article. How about if you sort of, because I do consultations with authors through Readsy all the time, and so I'm quite used to thinking on my feet about what could you do for your book, and I've got certain kind of go-to strategies. Would it help if we just talked about your book and maybe what I would do? Or I'm not saying I'm an oracle, I'm just saying maybe
Oh yeah,
or I
sure.
could just, we could talk in a more general way about it.
So for instance, my book, it originally started out as a blog and I was homesick. And so I grew up in the state of Maine, which is a very unique, bizarre world. And while I was doing that, I started writing a blog, and it was just like the stories that I would tell people that no one really believed what was going on. So I started writing this blog, and then ultimately I spent 12 years living there. So I ran out of stories, and I was like, I got out what I needed to. I'm feeling better. So let's move on. And from there, the website needed to come down. So I was like, let's put it all into a book. So I put it into book format. I did not edit it. I literally copy and pasted, put it into book format and let it go. And people in Maine buy Maine things. So I didn't have to advertise. I didn't have to do anything. I just walked away in cash paychecks. But it also, like, as my writing has progressed, I've gotten to be a better writer, better marketer, better business person. And I kept looking at it going, oh, I'm a little ashamed that I put that out. So I went back and I re-edited, doubled the length and put it back out. And it's not doing bad. It's just not doing what it did 6 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's normal for most books. There's going to be a drop off, and you talk about books with a long tail and books with a short tail. It sounds like your book should have a long tail, though, if it's Maine related and things. Can I ask sort of specifically what the book was about?
It's
That would
really
be,
just about growing up in a small town in Maine. The stories are divided about growing up in Maine itself versus my experiences and what I was like as a kid. So it's
an autobiography then.
yeah, it's an autobiography, partly person, partly about the town.
Yeah.
Probably should have narrowed it into one or the other, but
Well, no, I mean,
they're intermixed.
yeah, one informs the other, doesn't it? So that's a difficult one, though, because autobiographies are very specific things. Insight into your state, your city are also specific things. Now, if it was a sort of travel book, I would be saying we need to be some sort of PDF download, highlighted the main things or the maps or just like a guide to the area. But that doesn't seem to be right in this case. If people are buying it because of you and your name and things like that, you could have some sort of video interview of yourself that people could go to your website for. What I would, or like you could do like a video tour of Maine. Again, I'm not sure how much is Maine, how much is you and these stories. But as a non-fiction thing, there are, I would say, is a more general, because I'd have to really think about that. I've not seen the book either, but it's a more general thing. I found, particularly when anything that's teaching or giving insight into a particular subject, you want to create a form of download or extra media that goes along with the book and would enhance the content of the book. So, for example, what we do is we have all of these musical examples that I talked about, the DVDs, but they're downloadable from our website now. So you go to the website, you put in your email address, and you can download all the examples from your book recorded. Every single author has recorded every single track in every single book. So when they download the book, we know what music they're into, like the jazz, blues, rock, and we have a good idea whether they're beginner, intermediate, that sort of thing. So when we launch our next book, we can send that out, the jazz book to the jazz list, etc., etc. So I think finding a way to have additional content to build a mailing list. So when you launch your next book, okay, I know that's a sort of medium to long-term strategy, but I think if people are buying your book and you're not at least trying to get an email address off them or put them into some sort of email automation that comes across like talking to them personally.
Do you do reader magnets with your multimedia components to get them to draw into the book in that direction?
Not really, no. We have a few books on KU, and they're more general books, the first 100 chords for guitar or whatever, and that have a wide appeal, and they're inexpensive on Amazon. I think that book's got like 2,500 reviews or something, and they're all pretty good. And if you're searching chords on guitar and that comes up and it's cheap, and then you can get the audio, and then suddenly you're in our ecosystem and things like that. So our lead magnets would be probably cheaper books that we put in KU, but most of our books aren't in like Select at all.
Okay.
And yeah, again, we're running adverts all the time for AMS. So every single book that we have is a business card. And once somebody bought that, we find, I don't know why, but I think it's about 30% of people get the audio. I don't understand why it's not 100%. But I know you can't be on the list twice, so I'm sure people have bought more than one book. But yeah, we keep a really clean list, which is around 100,000 people now. But still, we've sold about 1 million books. Obviously, that's over 10 years, and we've deleted a lot of names from that list. But yeah, we reckon it's about 1 in 3 people who get the book will get the audio.
Because you have a YouTube channel as well?
Yeah, I've not done anything on the YouTube channel for ages, actually. We use for marketing, it would be Instagram and Facebook right now.
Okay. Is there any reason that you're not using YouTube? I'm just curious on that.
Yeah, I think the big and organization and it's sort of having to put a whole, like a little team in around like producing videos and getting everything uploaded and then promoting those, because it's a chicken and an egg thing. YouTube will reward you for getting people to YouTube, and in terms of time and visibility, where and I don't think people realize that. I think it's like, oh, I've put my thing on YouTube. Why is nobody looking at it? It's like Amazon. And going back to this sort of attitude of people who seem to have put my book on Amazon. Why isn't Amazon selling my book? Amazon aren't bad. Your book is a product number 6 billion for Amazon. And if they're going to make more money off a toaster and they think that person's going to buy a toaster, they're going to show them a toaster. Like, that's the cruel reality of the marketplace, is that Amazon doesn't care what it's selling. I would imagine. You can't speak for Amazon. I don't know Jeff yet, but like, they're there to make a profit. Now, if you put up a book and it never send anybody to it, then that book will sink down the rankings and eventually disappear. If you put a book up and then send 100,000 people to it over a course of 5 to 10 days, then they're going to show that book to more people, because I guess, again, all this is, what's the word? Educated guesswork. That if Amazon goes, oh, that book's selling and it's ranking highly and people are buying it and we're making money on it, we're going to show it to more people. It's sort of pretty, intuitive. And it's sort of, it's hard. And that's one of the reasons why it's so hard for new authors. And that's why it's so easy for famous people to write a biography because people, they have an audience, and that's the biggest struggle. You can be the best writer in the world, but if you've not got an audience to share that book with, it's very hard to launch a book, particularly if you have the attitude that I'm not going to spend any money on this. And it's all very well for me to say, and I can hear people go to book, it's all very, a million books, it's all very well for him to say you have to invest money. I don't have any. I think you at least have to start running some Amazon ads.
So I'm curious. So you've written this tutorial book, a lesson book.
Back in the day, like the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
You've decided to sit down and you're going to teach someone via a book.
Yeah.
How do you approach it's a book. They don't get to go, oh, what does he mean here? Let me phone him up and ask him.
Mhm.
This book is a standalone product where they purchased it and they're now on their own. How do you go about writing an instructional manual that is self-contained and
Yeah.
leaves no questions unturned, I guess?
It's a great question. It's like, I think the honest answer is the experience of explaining things to people about music. And whether I think I'm a good writer or not, I do know that I'm a good teacher when it comes to a lot of patience. And I have the ability to think about things in different ways and understand whether my student, kinesthetic learner, or oral, or auditory, I should say, or visual, and trying to make sure I can cover those bases with them and go slowly enough that they get the idea. Because if they're not getting it from me, writing it down, go, here it is. Okay, then play this, just play this note, or whatever it happens to be. Just having 20 years of flexibility and having taught guitar, and also spent 5 years in learning environments where I know I can recognize good teachers and bad teachers, music teachers. And fortunately, I've had very few bad teachers. I don't know if it's relevant, but like, I was always very good at engineering. I was always very good at like reverse engineering a problem. And I nearly went into like design and engineering and that kind of thing, because I love like solving problems. And I think that idea of solving a problem is that kind of impetus for writing in a particular way. Is that this guy doesn't understand this thing. How can I break it down step by step? Because they're there. Like, what's the easiest exercise that I can give them to get them started on this route? Okay, and then what would be the next thing they needed to do? And what would be the next thing they needed to do? And what would be the next thing they needed to do? Right through the book. The book might have 10 subject areas in it, or 3, whatever, but getting understanding the material that they would need to cover to go from A to Z, and really just, I don't know, just seeing a way to break it down. I think that's it, really.
I have 15 years of teaching experience, teaching high school students. The multi-mode teaching system, that's great, because I wish I learned by doing. It's not how I learned. So I like having the visual in front of me. That's the fastest way for me to get something, which probably why I didn't make for a great musician.
I'm a very visual learner. I do learning from videos, ironically.
I love learning from a book, someone talking at me, I get flustered.
I think that's part of it with the book, because I do a lot of editing, like me, and I've got my business partner, Tim, and he's basically publishing director, really. It's his role now. And he and I, we do a lot of editing, and a lot of that editing is to make things more personable. So we're not talking at you.
Mhm.
We're showing you a pathway of, it's not do this. It's like, this next example shows how you can do this. Moving on from there, in the next example, you'll see the similar idea, but now we've just added this little thing. And it is, play this, bit of explanation. Now play this, a bit of explanation. It's all tries to be very tactile. Of course, there's going to be theory and things built in, but generally it's play it, hear it.
Because you're doing tutorial books, do you run your books through beta readers to?
Tim and I absolutely edit and proofread each other's books. And Tim's had 20 years in the publishing industry, and he's been involved in the production, I think, of over 700 books. I've been doing this for 10 years. I've done 150. So I think whatever formula I accidentally struck on with fundamental changes, it does seem to work. And so we just repeat that format. And actually, even some of that format even just came about as, well, converting this to a Kindle book, how's it going to look? Because if you get like a textbook, maybe moving into formatting, and there's like a box here and a box here and a little happy face and then some text here, we both know that's really difficult to reproduce in Kindle without using what's it called, a fixed format layout and having a massive file size. Having text then notation and text then notation is actually a really good way to have a linear book that converts well.
Do your ebooks for the most, so when you're coming up with a new book, are you designing or writing it for the ebook, or are you doing it more for the print book? Like, which one comes first in the thought process?
I hate to be that guy, but honestly, like, neither. We write the book because we think the book will be valuable to the students. However, we have got our Microsoft Word templates, our InDesign templates, all set up for people to write in a particular way. And that ties in not only to a kind of our house style requirement, but it also, and our house style, that's the thing, it's this kind of chicken and egg Russian dolls thing, but our house style requirements have basically come out of the Kindle formatting requirements that we need. However, that does work really well as InDesign, and
Mhm.
that will go into paperback. So again, like, we're still tinkering with this stuff, but the kind of MO is to like keep it simple, it's really a couple of hundred words of text example, a couple of hundred words of text that explain the example, and so on and so forth. Each chapter is going to have an intro section, of course. The book's going to have an intro, a little conclusion at the end. We try not to write books that are over 17,000 words. We try to just, which we can do because we need to be succinct, but friendly but succinct. And we release a book pretty much every 2 weeks. So when things start getting really long, then of course, it takes longer to edit, it takes longer to get to market, it takes longer to get the author, their royalties. And actually, what's become very important to me, and particularly over the last 18 months, although it always has been, is that now we're a publishing company. And I'll just jump back to, I think, about 18 books in, and I ran out of stuff to write about. I asked my friend, who's an amazing death metal guitarist, to write this book. And by that time, like, I was living in Thailand, I think. He had this good idea for a book. I said, well, listen, and I've got some branding together by this time. I'm quite good at editing. How about I edit your book, and how about I do all the branding and do all the publishing side of it? You write it, or we'll have this royalty deal. He said, yeah, cool. And that's when we became a publishing company. And it was like, okay, right. And now to start protecting things, have to form a limited company, all this kind of stuff. And so the idea that we are a publishing company and we have distribution and all of this kind of thing, that it's never been we're here and the author is here. Every single thing that we do is a partnership, because the artist has got something to say. We believe in the artist. We believe in what they're saying. It's like our part of that bargain, that deal to get it to market. Actually, I had to very sadly say no to somebody the other day who'd written a really good book, and they'd come to us with it. And it just covered so much ground that it was covered by another one of our artists. Like, again, like, the little business part of me is going, yeah, no, I would like nothing better to own this guy's intellectual property and make money from it. But that would be doing a disservice to somebody that we've already published. And it would be cannibalizing their content and directly competing with that. And so I sadly said no, and it was a good book. And, I said, I don't think we're the right people for you, which he was obviously disappointed by, but he's better off publishing that himself and making money for himself, because I don't think we'd be able to really promote it against the titles that we've already got. And I prefer a musician to be making money, even if that's not with us.
You just answered so many of my questions with that. So to start the wind down, you've been pretty successful up to this point. what is your next plateau of success? What does that look like for fundamental changes?
That's a really difficult question to answer. Are we talking like financial or a contribution or
I, however you define success. I know it's a very multifaceted
it really is a
definition.
I think I want to keep the company growing, not necessarily in a financial sense. And I think I realize I'm about to turn 40, and I think I've just had this realization quite recently that I've spent the last 10 years pretty much like locked in a room writing and working by myself. And it's been at times a struggle with my relationship. I'm engaged. We've been together 12 years, and Amanda's incredibly supportive of me. But a huge amount of life has gone past my window while I've been locked inside. And I don't want to repeat that. I think it's really important that the next 10 years and next hopefully 40 years of my life, whatever, are more about getting outside and having experiences. Because there have been times with fundamental changes in writing where certainly when things were going well and I was younger, and things are going well now, but like when things started to go well, that it was like, oh my gosh, we can keep publishing, we can keep making money. This is like insane. Like I've never seen this kind of success before. This is just ridiculous. And so like the financial thing, not that it took over, but it was just really good business reasons for working very hard and growing the company. And so when like we're turning over 7 figures now, and I'm looking at the success I've had, and I've actually just gone like financially, that's enough. And this is I'm trying to say this in a kind of a humble way, but like I have enough
Mhm.
financially. Like I have enough. And so I don't want, I want the business to continue because it's paying the bills and everything's great. But it can't happen at the expense of my mental health. It can't happen at the expense of free time, enjoying my life, my relationships. And I kind of project that onto everybody that I'm working with. Like we work really hard. For example, we had a meeting today and Tim was a bit like, oh, what are we going to do? That book's not going to be out. And like, it's my company. I'm like, and a few years ago, I'd been a bit stressful. Okay, well, it's coming up to Christmas. We really need to do something. I was like, okay, it doesn't come out. Let's take, and we've been releasing a book every 2 weeks, like pretty much for the last 4 years. You know what? We don't release a book, that we move on. We take that time that we would have been putting into the book launch and we take a break, or we just do some writing, or we just calm down a bit. And I suppose that's what I'm trying to say, is that being happy and
Mm.
being content and realizing that the things around work, and I don't want to do 16-hour days anymore. I'm happy to work, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't need to be that insane level. And I want that for everyone around me. And yeah,
I
I
did,
don't know how that comes across as an answer. I'm just trying to say life.
no, I have sold literally all my possessions and I am moving to a foreign country chasing
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
So I have busted butt for the majority of my life and I've made the money. I found success.
Yeah.
And now I want to go find happy. I feel you on that. And I think that is a hard realization and a really hard concept. I turned 42 weeks ago. So I'm calling my midlife crisis.
With you, man. We've got a lot in common. You have to come to Edinburgh. We can go and drink whiskey together in Rua.
Yeah. It's time to reap the reward. And I can't take money with me to
Mhm.
my grave. So I'd
Yeah.
rather take experiences.
Yeah. I completely agree with, and actually when I figured out what I want to do, which is essentially, believe it or not, probably have a dog rescue center and be outside and just be around like animals. And that's always been my first love. I don't need the money that I'm earning to do that. And in fact, I could have probably stopped this a few years ago. or just focused on things that I enjoy. Because actually, people go, "Oh, I need this much money to stop." It's like, well, actually, you don't need to stop. You just need to introduce things into your life that give you joy. And yeah, like I could probably do what I want to do on 10 or 15,000 pounds a year. I don't need to pounds a year to do it. And I think it's a really important thing to keep in mind is how much do I need not to have another house or not to fly first class around the world or anything like that, but the stuff that I love and the stuff that makes me joyful and the stuff that I really care about, how much do I need to do that? And if you've got it, and go and do it.
And that'll bring me up to my final question is, what is the next step for fundamental changes? Is there anything big on the horizon for them? Is there for you?
Yeah, I think the coolest part of my job is the fact that I get to hang out with my heroes. And we still work with authors of all notoriety and fame, but like working with my heroes like Martin Taylor. I'm writing a book with Greg Howe at the moment, and I'm writing like Josh Smith, great blues guitar player. We've done things with Tommy Emmanuel and Robin Ford and Jennifer Batten, and we're just working with my heroes. And so I'm like super happy to keep doing this. The big thing, and I would like to maybe get this into the article if I can, but it is a bit of a plug, so I'll leave that for you. And I mentioned it, is one thing that's been really successful for us as a company is about 4 years ago, we translated all of my books into German. And I did that by finding freelancers and paying to do that. And most of our books now translated into German. And every book that we release now, as a matter of course, is on the production line to be done into German. That's been so successful that I did a big batch last year of books, or the year before maybe. And when we ran out of books to do at that time, so we've got these amazing translators who are really talented. And I started asking people if they wanted to use them. Basically made a little tiny bit of margin, but connected translators to this. And that's become my new company, which is translatebooks.com.
Oh, wow.
So we are now working with JD Kirk, David Penny, Craig Martell, and we're translating their books into German. And again, coming back to that financial thing, we of course, like as a business, we're making money, but actually we're pricing it so that the translators get paid what they want to get paid. But essentially for translation and proofreading by two different people, like no AI translation, no DeepL, nothing like that. Because we tried DeepL with my guitar books, and it was a disaster. We're charging 7.5p, which I'm not sure what that is in cents, but not many.
Like 9 cents?
9 cents per word, basically translated and proofread back to the author. So it's a little business. It's doing really well though, and like our translators are pretty much booked up at the moment. But that's the next thing. I really want to grow that because I think it's just it's a wonderful service for authors. And at the moment, a couple of people who have used us for translations. And as a part of that, you get my insight into advertising and using marketing in Germany. I get on the phone and have a chat. Germany's actually overtaken English for some of their books.
Oh, wow.
Which is huge. And they were doing very well anyway. And certainly a lot of people are finding that German books are selling. Books in Amazon DE are now outselling Amazon UK, even if they're not quite surpassing Amazon US, which you might expect. And actually, the thing is that it's so much easier to translate a book and put it into the German market because German market, there's not much competition there at the moment. There's this big wave coming of everybody's translating. Mark Dawson's doing it very successfully. He's making hundreds of dollars a day with his German translations, and getting those books translated, put into Germany is like a whole new audience. And a few of our clients are just doing it as a matter of course. They release a new book, it comes to us, we now translate it. So building that, it's not necessarily a fundamental changes thing, but I think it's a really exciting sort of new frontier really for indies going into Germany. And it's
Well, it's cool how it grew out of fundamental changes and took on its own life.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, get to meet some people again, like doing JD Kirk's books. It's wonderful. He's a friend anyway, but yeah, they're doing great. And it's just, yeah, it's one of those things like, I suppose, yes, okay, of course we're making money, but like my whole thing is I just want to help people. And whether that's get into Germany or play guitar or piano, become a better author or sell their books better through the consultations that I do, it really does come out of a very genuine place of let's help people. But yeah, like I just continuing to work with authors that we love can just continue to enjoy what we're doing, but try and just keep reaching people and try and keep teaching the world to play music. That sounds really trite and cheesy, but
It is what it is.
yeah.
Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate this.
Oh man, no, thank you for having me on. It's such a pleasure to be asked. Sorry if I feel a little bit low energy. It's always like these things gonna get me quite thoughtful. But yeah, no, I'm really flattered to be asked, and thank you. It's just hopefully something that I've said helps some people.
So I'm